They called her just the tech. To the team, Sergeant Tessa Morgan was a quiet civilian specialist, attached to the elite recon unit Bravo 4 for one reason: systems support. She wasn't military, not in the traditional sense. She didn't wear body armor, didn't fire a rifle, didn't bark orders. Her uniform was clean, her demeanor calm, and her eyes always buried in some screen scanning code and coordinates. A ghost behind a keyboard. To them, she was invisible. They didn't know what command knew. They didn't ask why someone with no visible rank had full clearance to classified digital warfare suites. They didn't notice the small titanium chain around her neck, or the burn scars on her shoulder that she'd never explained. In their eyes, she was nothing more than a techie, a necessary appendage, like a laptop or a drone. Helpful, sure, but expendable. Their mission was critical: extract a rogue American intelligence officer from a remote village along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border before he defected. Intel suggested the officer carried a drive containing high-level encryption, keys, nuclear access pathways, drone control frequencies, and operatives' real names embedded in algorithmic markers. If that drive fell into enemy hands, it could compromise national security on a catastrophic scale. The task force assembled quickly. Bravo to 4, hardened Rangers and Marines, prepped for insertion. They packed light and fast. Each of them had seen a fire to fill a dozen lifetimes. Tessa was told she'd remain at FOB Dahlia, the remote base set up a few clicks from the border. Her job? Maintain sat feed, monitor signals, and ensure encrypted comms stayed secure. But that morning, something changed. The satellite imagery over the target village flickered, then blacked out. Every attempt to restore the feed failed. Next, communications began to degrade. Static first, then looping feedback. Enemy signal jamming. Likely mobile. Whoever they were, they knew the Americans were coming. Bravo 4 CO, Captain Rains, growled in frustration. Without eyes in the sky, we're blind. Command issued a revised directive. Bring Morgan. She can restore systems from the field. Tessa overheard Rains mutter under his breath. Am babysitting a keyboard jockey now. She packed her field gear in silence. A tactical laptop, mini drone relays, encryption packs, power cells. But as she zipped her kit, she reached into a hidden compartment and slid out a small weathered sidearm. Black matte finish. Custom grip. It wasn't on her list. It wasn't standard issue. She stared at it for a long second. Then she tucked it into her waistband beneath her jacket. A convoy moved out at 0600, 2 Humvees, 8 men, 1 ghost. Tessa sat in the back seat of the second vehicle, wedged between ammo crates and gear. She tapped into a backup sat link as the convoy kicked dust along the barren trail. The sun hadn't fully risen, casting everything in gold and gray. The silence outside was matched only by the subtle discomfort inside. The soldiers spoke in code and dark jokes, tossing glances at her like she was a misplaced file folder. Hey, Tech, one of the younger corporals smirked. You ever see action? Tessa didn't reply. Another chuckled. She's probably got a kill switch on her laptop. Just CTRL plus Alt plus delete the enemy. Laughter rolled through the cabin. Even Rains cracked a half grin, though he never looked her way. She stared at the screen. Something felt off. The terrain patterns on the GPS were fluctuating by fractions of a second. Barely noticeable, unless you'd seen this trick before. She flagged it, ran a fast packet scan. The results confirmed her suspicion. The signal was being mirrored. Their GPS was being spoofed, redirected by a live feed loop. The path they were on wasn't the one Command had mapped. She leaned forward. Captain, we may be heading into a falsified corridor. GPS signals are... I didn't ask for a system report, Rains interrupted. eyes fixed on the trail. "Stick to your job, Morgan. This is my job," she said firmly. "They've bent the GPS path. We could be enough." Her jaw tensed. She could push it, but it wouldn't matter. She was still just the tech. Outside, the village came into view. It looked abandoned. Too abandoned. No kids, no elders, no livestock. The kind of quiet that only comes after something awful. She reached for her backup comm antenna and initiated a manual frequency sweep. Then she froze. A looping signal played on an encrypted band, one she hadn't heard in years. It wasn't just jamming dot, it was a bait loop. Someone wanted them here. She looked up just in time to see a shimmer across the dirt road, a line buried just beneath the dust. "Wait." Boom! The lead Humvee exploded in a fireball, lifted into the air like a toy, and slammed back into the earth in a crumpled heap. Shrapnel screamed through the air. Flames roared. Men shouted. The blast rocked her vehicle, and she slammed against the wall, ears ringing. Smoke poured in. The driver was yelling. The soldier beside her was bleeding from the shoulder. Chaos. The convoy had been ambushed. But even in the chaos, Tessa's face remained unnervingly calm. Eyes sharp, she reached for her weapon. This time she wasn't just the tech. She was something else entirely. Dust clouded the air, thick as smoke. Tessa blinked away the grit as the second vehicle jolted to a stop. The air was filled with shouting men yelling for cover, calling for the medic, scanning their sectors. The lead Humvee was torn apart. Flames leaping skyward. Metal crackled and hissed. 2 soldiers were clearly dead. The others, either wounded or missing in action. Tessa forced her door open and dropped to the dirt, scanning the terrain. Her laptop was gone, crushed in the blast impact. That was her lifeline. But she still had the manual override antenna strapped across her back. And her sidearm. She crawled toward a nearby rock outcrop and flicked the antenna online. Static. Dead frequencies. No satellite connection. The jamming wasn't just local, it was layered, artificial, and likely mobile. Someone had gone through great effort to bury them in silence. This wasn't just a random ambush. It had been planned. Someone had leaked their exact coordinates, and that meant they were being hunted. Tech. A voice barked behind her. She turned to see Sergeant Dunley, one of the recon team's forward scouts, gripping his shoulder, blood seeping through his sleeve. "We've got 2 down, 3 injured. I need working comms now. They're jamming us." "I need higher ground to break the loop," she said quickly. "Then find it," he snapped. "Unless you've got a magic wand in that backpack." He ran off, limping toward the crater where the first vehicle had been. She swallowed her irritation and scrambled for elevation. About 40 yards east, a pile of rock formed a ridge overlooking the road. As she climbed, her boots slipped slightly in the loose dirt. Her breath quickened. She could feel the weight of eyes on her watching. Waiting at the top, she unrolled her portable array and attached a signal booster, improvising a relay using wires stripped from her drone controller. Her hands worked fast, mind racing. She used a decoy IP pulse to bait the jammers, and it worked. A tiny blip of connection broke through, just long enough to trigger a backup system buried deep in Echo Air archives. A faint tone buzzed in her earpiece. A ghost channel. Encrypted, buried, forgotten. Except by her. But before she could trace it further, she saw them 3 silhouettes on the rooftop of a nearby structure, about 300 meters away. 2 clean, 2 still. Each held a rifle. Snipers. She lunged behind a rock just as the first shot cracked through the air. Dust exploded near her shoulder. The second shot hit her antenna, sparking out her signal. Useless now. Down below, Dunley and the others returned fire blindly, ducking between cover and dragging the wounded back. Tessa reached for her sidearm. The moment her fingers gripped the familiar frame, her breathing changed. Her heart didn't race. It steadied. The old training came rushing back. How to move under fire, how to aim while lying prone, how to feel rather than think. Her memories didn't come like flashes. They came like muscle memory. 5 years earlier, she had been part of a team that didn't exist. Echo Squadron. A Black Ops unit trained for cyber-physical integration, cross-trained in tech and field combat. They infiltrated, disrupted, disappeared, and a mission went sideways. A betrayal. A death toll too high. The government buried the operation. Survivors. Vanished, retired, reassigned, scrubbed. Tessa walked away. Or so she thought. Back in the moment, she steadied her breath and peeked through a broken scope she recovered from a fallen soldier's rifle. Adjusting her aim with only instinct and light geometry, she waited for the movement, a flash of reflection on the rooftop. Then she squeezed the trigger. One shot, one body dropped. The other two snipers scrambled. One ducked. The other fired in panic, wide and wild. Before he could find her again, Tessa moved laterally, found a new angle, and fired a second time. Clean hit. The third fled. She didn't chase. Instead, she slid down the ridge, knees burning, and rejoined the unit at the charred remains of the convoy. Captain Rains was propped against a rock, pale and bleeding from a gash across his thigh. His weapon was empty. You? He rasped, looking at her like she was someone else entirely. You just dropped 2 snipers. She didn't answer. Sergeant Dunley was crouched nearby, working with a medic. What the hell was that, Morgan? I told you we were being led into a trap, she said flatly, checking the perimeter. The GPS was fake. The radio traffic was a loop. They knew we were coming. You said they were jamming. They were, she said, her voice calm, but low. But not just us. They were jamming everything, including the air support grid. We were never supposed to make it out of that village. A silence settled around the group. The surviving soldiers, bloodied and exhausted, stared at her now with a different expression, less skepticism, more confusion. Even fear. Captain Rains shifted. Who trained you? I told you, she replied, still scanning the horizon. I'm just the tech. But her tone was colder, sharper, like a blade hidden behind a smile. Rains squinted at her for a long second. No, he finally said. No, you're not. Far off in the distance, over the next ridge, the low hum of vehicles echoed. More were coming. Not friendly. Tessa stood slowly and reloaded her sidearm. We need to move, she said. I know a fallback position 2 clicks west. High ground, defensible. Rains nodded, too weak to argue. And so the soldiers followed. Not because she outranked them, but because suddenly she was their only chance of survival. The narrow path west was treacherous, lined with steep ridges, jagged rocks, and silence that screamed louder than any ambush. Tessa led them through goat trails only locals or ghosts would know. The desert wind howled across the barren hills, whipping dust into their eyes as they moved, limping, dragging, bleeding. The wounded were fading fast. One soldier, Private Leary, had shrapnel embedded in his back. He clenched his jaw through the pain, refusing to be carried. Another, Corporal Jennings, had burns along his left arm and had lost all communication gear. Still they followed, because Tessa, just the tech, was the only one not panicking. Every movement she made was deliberate. She didn't hesitate, didn't ask for orders. She gave them. And the men, battered and broken, obeyed. They reached the plateau after nearly 2 hours of careful movement. The church ruins stood like a skeleton, stone walls fractured by time, the roof gone, and charred beams jutting skyward like broken ribs. Tessa had seen this place before in another life. She swept through the compound quickly, checking for threats. No fresh tracks, no movement, no signs of life. That didn't mean it was safe. It meant they had minutes at best. Still, it would do. Set the wounded in the chapel shell, she ordered. Set up perimeter watch on the west and north sides. Watch the ridgelines. This place will light up soon. Captain Rains, carried by Dunley and another, gave a weak chuckle from the ground. You really are used to giving orders. I'm used to people not dying when they listen, she replied, crouching beside a rusted weapons crate. Inside were old Soviet-era mortar, long decommissioned, and ancient ammunition, not usable, but valuable in another way. She began constructing trap tripwire-based IEDs, using leftover rounds from their own fallen comrades, pressure triggers, and the terrain itself. The team watched in stunned silence. This wasn't textbook military behavior. This was Black Ops. Level asymmetrical warfare. Where did you even learn this? Jennings asked. I told you, she muttered, placing a round into the loose floor of the stairwell. Before I was a tech, I was part of Echo. The name made Rain's head tilt. Echo? As in Echo Squadron? She didn't answer, but the look in her eyes said enough. Everyone had heard the rumors. An elite group disbanded after a catastrophic mission went dark. No survivors on record. Officially, it never existed. Some said it was cyber warfare. Others said assassins. Some swore it was a ghost story meant to scare recruits. And yet, here she was real, alive, and very, very dangerous. Suddenly, her comm cracked alive a signal weak. Fragmented, but unmistakable. A code, not standard military. It was Echo's fallback code, a one-way encrypted ping buried so deep in black server stacks that even DARPA pretended not to see it. She quickly triangulated, a response beacon miles east, but that didn't make sense. They were supposed to be alone. No reinforcements, no rescue, unless... Her jaw clenched. Unless someone else knew Echo's codes and if they weren't friendly, Tessa? Rains asked, what is it? We're not just being hunted, she said. We're being herded. She turned and looked to the ridges. They want us here, trapped in one place, for a final sweep. Dunley cursed. We walked right into it, she nodded, and they knew I'd bring you here. This isn't just about the intel officer anymore. It's about me. Rains blinked. Why you? Because I survived something I wasn't supposed to, she said, her voice flat. Because I carry a signal they can't let reach the outside world. And because someone out there still fears Echo. Her eyes narrowed. And maybe they should. The first shot came just before dusk. A sniper round that took out the lookout. On the northwest wall, the second hit the stone beside Tessa's shoulder as she ducked into cover. Contact. Dunley shouted, North Ridge. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the valley. Shadows moved across the cliffs, figures in desert fatigues, too well coordinated to be militia. These were trained. Tactical.x-military. She recognized the spacing. The sweep pattern. These weren't random insurgents. These were cleaners sent to erase them. The team returned fire, but ammo was low. Their original stockpile had been destroyed with the first Humvee. Tessa passed Jennings her sidearm, slid across the chapel floor, to retrieve a second rifle, and fired through a broken stained glass window. Her bullet clipped a hostile and dropped him instantly. Two flanking from the east. She shouted, Minefield in place watch. Moments later, an explosion burst through the silence. One of her traps had worked. Screams followed, but it wasn't enough. They were closing in 50 yards. Then 40. The ruins shook with tension. Then, above the gunfire, she heard it, the low thump of rotors distant, but coming fast. She blinked. Was it rescue? Or worse, was it them? The group paused, confused. Even the hostiles hesitated. Tessa flipped her comms on and whispered, "Come on." A click. Then, a single voice broke through coded, scrambled. Ghost confirmed. Authorization, Tango Zulu 7. Her heart stopped. That was an Echo-level authorization. Someone from the old network had answered. Help was coming, but she had to hold this ground. 10 more minutes. No matter what. Rains coughed, blood on his sleeve. "We're not going to make it." Tessa reloaded. "We don't have to. Just hold." She sprinted to the northern breach, shoulder rolled behind cover, and dropped 2 more targets. The others held position, rallying behind her. No longer doubting. No longer joking. Because in that moment, it was clear she was no longer just the tech. She was the only one keeping them alive. The rotor noise grew louder, an unfamiliar rhythm echoing through the valley. Everyone paused, breath tight, guns raised toward the horizon. Above the burning orange cliffs, a black silhouette emerged. A twin-prop helicopter. Matte paint? No. Visible markings. Not American military issue. Not local. Something in between. Tessa's jaw tightened. She knew that sound. Blackbird-8. Only used in off-books missions. Echo used them once before, was wiped from existence. This one had no lights, no transponder, and hovered low like it was hunting ghosts. And somehow, it had found her. She switched to a buried frequency in her headset, fingers trembling. "Echo 3, this is Morgan. If you're real, authenticate." A pause. Then. Authorization, Tango Zulu 7. "You're late, Ghost?" Her breath caught. Only 4 people alive knew that code. 3 were confirmed dead. So who was flying that bird? Extraction? She asked. Negative. The voice replied, "Cover. Fire and signal relay. You've got 7 minutes. Clear a perimeter." Tessa clicked her mic off and turned to the stunned soldiers. "They're not landing. Not unless we clear a field. North quadrant, 70 meters. We do it now, or we don't leave at all." Rains groaned, trying to sit up. "Who the hell are you?" She didn't have time to answer. "Move!" she shouted. Corporal. Jennings and Dunley sprinted toward the north ridge, laying down suppressive fire. Tessa stayed behind long enough to cover the medic moving the wounded. The church, now half collapsing from mortar strikes, rattled behind them as more enemies emerged from the South Pass. It was a pincer now, classic sweep pattern. They were being boxed in. She pulled out the final piece of gear from her bag, a small cylindrical device with blinking red light. The echo beacon. Once activated, it would transmit a precise location pulse to friendly aircraft. In normal military use, it was outdated, too traceable. But in Echo, it was a last resort, when everything else failed, and you were ready to be found or die trying. She jammed it into the ground, flipped the cover, and held her thumb over the button. If she pushed it, every enemy radio would pick it up too. But without it, the Blackbird would leave. No more time. Click. A sharp hum filled the air. The beacon linked to life. Instantly, the enemy fire intensified. Someone had picked it up. "They're coming in heavy," Dunley shouted from the ridge. "We've got multiple south side." Tessa ran, fast, rifle in hand. Her boots slid over loose rocks as she sprinted uphill, lungs burning. She passed 2 injured men, covering them with smoke grenades. Her movements were exact-timed, precise. Not desperation. Discipline. Jennings stared at her. "You're not a tech." She looked back at him briefly. "I was Echo 6, Cyber Combat Specialist. Call sign Ghost. Decommissioned. Why did you leave?" "I didn't," she said quietly. "I was erased." They reached the northern plateau, just as the Blackbird passed overhead again, this time lower. A rope ladder dropped. The bird hovered dangerously close to a cliffside. Enemy troops surged from below. Tessa opened fire, 2 shots, 2 down. She motioned to Jennings, who hoisted reins first, then the medic. One by one they climbed. Go. Dunley yelled, holding the eld ridge with the last few rounds in his clip. But Tessa stayed low, picking off targets. The pilot's voice rang in her earpiece again. You've got 60 seconds. She spotted a figure aiming a rocket launcher toward the bird. No time to shout. She dropped her rifle, drew her pistol. One clean breath, 1 shot. The figure collapsed. Rocket clattered to the rocks. The unit was safe. Last one, the pilot said. You're up. But she didn't move yet. She scanned again, counting bodies. Dunley was down, crawling. She raced toward him, ignoring the fire, grabbed his vest, and hauled him toward the rope. He grunted, bleeding from his leg. You gonna carry me too? If I have to. She shoved him up the ladder, bullets cracking the air around them. Finally, it was her turn. She climbed fast, hand over hand, as the helicopter pitched violently from incoming fire. She gritted her teeth, muscles burning, legs swinging in the air. Jennings reached down, grabbing her wrist. She cleared the ledge just as another explosion rocked the ridge below. The blackbird rose sharply, leaving the ruins and flames behind. Silence filled the cabin. Everyone was staring at her, not with suspicion anymore, with awe. Captain Rains broke the silence. You should be dead. She looked at him, expression unreadable. I was, on paper. The pilot turned back. Where do I drop you? Tessa paused, looked at her team, wounded, saved by the one person they dismissed. Then she said, take them to Dahlia Base. I'll exit before then. You sure? Always. The men exchanged glances. Jennings opened his mouth to protest, but she was already removing her gear. An hour later, the chopper touched down in a dry gulch 10 miles. From base, she stepped out into the fading light, alone again. The pilot tossed her a small package. From Echo Command. Whatever's left of it. She opened it. Inside, her old titanium dog tag. Etched, Echo Squadron-Ghost. And beneath it, a note. You're not done yet. She stared into the setting sun. Somewhere out there, whoever had leaked their mission still operated in the shadows. And Tessa Morgan, no longer just a tech, was going to find them. Night had fallen like a curtain across the desert. Tessa walked alone, the sand whispering under her boots. Behind her, the black helicopter had vanished, its sound swallowed by the horizon. She'd left the team again. That was always the way with ghosts. She saved lives, then disappeared like fog at sunrise. But this time, she wasn't just fading into the shadows. She had a target. The Echo dog tag swung against her chest. Heavy. Final. She hadn't worn it in 5 years. Not since the Cairo incident, the op that shattered Echo Squadron and buried the survivors under redacted files and silent graves. Back then, she'd been told to disappear, to stop asking questions, to forget what she saw, but she never had. And now, someone had resurrected her past and used it to try and kill her. 2 days later, she reached a civilian checkpoint near Hirat, disguised in local dress and carrying a fake ID that said she was a Red Crescent translator. Her Arabic was fluent, her posture deferential. No one questioned her. In a rented safe house above a textile shop, she plugged into a black market satellite line and opened her encrypted archive, something only Echo ghosts could access. The frequency that had responded during the firefight Tango Zulu 7 was real. But the source wasn't one of the original Echo pilots. It had been bounced to 3 dead satellites, then masked using an Echo-level cloaking program. Only one person ever developed Tessa, which meant whoever sent the signal had access to her own black code. and that was impossible. Unless she pulled up an old profile. Major Elias Cade, her former commanding officer, the one who led the Cairo op, the one who'd been declared Kier, burned in a staged safe house explosion. She stared at the last known photo of him, dark eyes, scar across his brow, a face carved from stone. Was he alive? Or worse, was someone using his ghost? A knock at the door broke her focus. Tessa drew her pistol, approached the door silently, then tapped 3 times against the side frame. The person on the other side responded with 2 slow knocks, one quick. Code. Echo protocol. She opened the door. In stepped Nate Harrow, former Echo Cybernetics and field analyst. He looked older, thinner, nervous. "Tessa," he whispered. "They said you were dead. They say that about all of us." He looked around. "Do you have it?" She nodded and pulled out a small flash module from her vest. "This has the relay trace from the ambush." "You were right. It wasn't enemy chatter. It was back-channeled through echo nodes." "But Nate, they didn't just jam us." "What do you mean?" "They cloned my operational footprint." "Whoever set that trap?" "They used my own signature codes to reroute the convoy." He went pale. "Only 2 people ever had access to that level of encryption. You and Cade," she said. A heavy silence followed. Nate sat down slowly. "I heard a whisper, months ago, about a new unit. Off books, not sanctioned. Something built in Echo's shadow. No names, no insignia. Just ... cleanup." "Cleanup?" she asked. "They specialize in hunting compromised operatives. Ones who know too much. Operatives like us." Tessa's eyes narrowed. "So they're not after the intel officer. They're after me. You're the last active Echo asset not buried or turned." Her jaw tightened. "Then I go back in." Nate's eyes widened. "You're not serious." "I have no choice. I need to know who ordered the ambush, who accessed my signature. But you've been exposed. They'll know you're looking." "Good," she said, standing. "Let them?" 2 days later, she arrived at a decommissioned military base on the outskirts of Kabul. Officially, it had been shut down. Unofficially, it still ran with a skeleton crew, engineers and analysts who owed favors to ghosts. There, Tessa accessed the old Echo archives. Deep files, fractured intel, layers of corruption. What she found chilled her blood. Major Cade's death had been staged, not by the enemy, but by internal clearance. A black project, Operative Theta, formed from Echo's ashes. Purpose: eliminate unstable assets. Reason: to prevent exposure of a failed U.S. black site prison located near Cairo 1. Tessa had uncovered during her last mission. She had stumbled too close to a truth that would unravel Command. So they erased her. And now, someone, maybe Cade himself, had pulled Operative Theta's leash again. This time, with her firmly in the crosshairs. Later that night, Tessa sat alone in the base chapel, staring at the broken cross hanging from the wall. Dust coated every surface. It felt like a tomb. She thought of Rains, Dunley, Jennings. They'd lived because she broke the rules, because she stopped pretending. She wasn't a tech anymore. She wasn't hiding. She was coming for answers. She touched her dog tag and whispered, "You want Ghost? You got her." Meanwhile, in a dimly lit room thousands of miles away, a figure watched her through. A live drone feed. Major Elias Cade. Alive, scar still across his brow. Older now. Colder. Behind him, a glowing screen showed satellite images of the firefight, the helicopter escape, and Tessa's recent movement. "She's moving faster than expected," a voice said behind him. "She always did," Cade replied. "What do you want to do?" Cade turned slowly. "Let her come." He walked toward the screen and tapped her face. I want her to remember everything. Before I end her. Tessa moved like a shadow through the forgotten corridors of the Kandahar underground transit tunnel abandoned since 2009. Few knew it still existed. Fewer still had the clearance to access it. She wasn't supposed to have either. But ghosts had their ways. Nate's data had pointed to a relay hub deep beneath the former military outpost, now supposedly sealed. But the power grid still pulsed faintly, and the fiber cables below had been rerouted in the last year. Someone was using the old bones of the war to hide their new monster. Operative Theta, a kill squad built from Echo's ruins. Run by Major Elias Cade, and hunting her. Tessa checked the corners. Infrared goggles confirmed heat. Signatures 2 guards posted beyond the next bulkhead. Armed. Relaxed. That was their first mistake. In one silent move, she dropped a small NP puck into the floor grate. A flicker of static. The corridor lights died. In the dark, 2 silenced pops echoed. Bodies dropped. She stepped over them without looking back. Deeper in, the silence was heavy. Dust hung like fog. She remembered these halls. Years ago, she'd trained here under Echo command. Now, the ghosts were real, and she was one of them. She reached the door. Steel, reinforced, fingerprint, and retina-coated. Nate's bypass module blinked green. 1 second later, it opened with a hiss. Inside, cold lights, humming servers, and a wall of monitors. Each one showed satellite feeds, drone cams, thermal tracks. Every screen showed her. She walked forward slowly, stunned by how far they'd gone. Every movement she'd made since the failed extraction tracked, mapped, and analyzed. Every facial expression, every encrypted message. They'd been watching and waiting. Then she saw it, the feed from Black Echo, a base that shouldn't exist anymore. Built as Echo's final fallback command center, it had supposedly been deconstructed. After Cairo, she saw soldiers there, training, all wearing no unit patches, all using Echo tactics. She leaned closer, heart pounding. On one monitor, a man in full tactical armor stood facing a firing line of soldiers. Cade, still alive, still commanding. Suddenly, the monitors flickered. Then, a voice, calm, familiar. Well done, Sergeant. Her blood froze. It was his voice. Cade, she whispered. On screen, he turned to face the camera. You are always too smart to stay dead, he said. She reached for her pistol, but the room's door slammed shut behind her. Locks. Sealed with magnetic force. I knew you'd find this place eventually. I wanted you to. I need you to see what Echo has become. Tessa looked around. You turned it into a kill factory. He smiled coldly. We turned it into insurance. No more exposed secrets. No more risks. Just clean endings. You murdered our squad. You killed innocents. I kept the country safe. You just never had the stomach for it. Her jaw tightened. What happens now? Now, he said. Now you join us. Or disappear. The screen went black. Gas hissed from the vents. Tessa didn't hesitate. She pulled her flare, pen from her boot, one of the oldest Echo tricks. She lit it and jammed it into the server's coolant tube. A chemical reaction sent pressure spiking. The system exploded in sparks. She covered her face and dove behind a steel desk. Flames licked the edges of the walls. Fire alarms failed to trigger. Just like she expected. They wanted no survivors. But she had one last move. She reached under the console and yanked out a casing, labeled T-Drone Relay, an autonomous flight recorder. She pocketed it, kicked, opened the vent shaft, and crawled into the dark. An hour later, Tessa emerged from a cave, mouth 5 miles outside the base perimeter. Smoke billowed in the distance. Her extraction would take hours. But she wasn't done yet. She called Nate. M to Fort Hollis command. Secure line. There was a pause. Tessa, he said cautiously, that's beyond red clearance. Do it. After a few static bursts, a voice came online. Who is this? Tessa Morgan. Former Echo. I have proof of an active black operation targeting U.S. assets. I need to speak to Director Kelman now. You're not authorized. Patch me through before Cade burns the world down. Another pause. Then, stand by. 36 hours later, she was flown under classified escort to Fort Hollis, a hardened intelligence base buried under the Colorado Rockies. The air was thinner here. The silence deeper. In a steel conference room, she dropped the T-drone relay. On the table. Play it. On screen, images flickered to life. Encrypted files showing Cade alive. His orders. Field executions. The operative Theta roster. One general leaned forward horrified. This isn't just a rogue unit. This is an entire black operation we lost track of. Or one we chose to forget, said another. Tessa didn't flinch. Now what are you going to do about it? After a long silence, Director Kelman nodded. We'll open a counter-op. Full scope. Operative Theta is officially rogue. And Cade? He's yours? Tessa stood slowly. Then I'll finish what Cairo started. Miles away, in Black Echo's command center, Cade stood watching a burning feed from the tunnel base. He didn't blink. A masked soldier stepped. Beside him, she found us. He nodded. She was always going to. Now she's lit the match. The soldier hesitated. Orders? Cade stared into the fire. Let her come. Rain pelted the edge of the Mojave testing range as Tessa adjusted the optic on her suppressed rifle. Her knuckles were white, breath steady, heart locked in steel. Below her, through the cracked scope lens, lay Black Echo now fully reactivated. No insignias, no calcines, no official existence, just ghosts. She had returned to where it all began. Not for revenge. For closure. From a ridge of scorched red rock, she spotted Theta's new recruits lining up for live fire drills. Each wore full blackout armor. Each moved with Echo's efficiency, but they lacked one thing, soul. Tessa spoke into her throat mic. Nate, I'm in position. His voice crackled back. Acknowledged. Satellite relay sensed. Drones orbiting. Still want to go solo? No backup. I go in clean. Tessa, Cade won't play fair. I'm counting on it. Inside the base, Cade stood at the heart of his reborn empire. The Situation Room buzzed with quiet energy. Screens flickered with heat signatures from the perimeter. She's here, one tech reported. Cade didn't react. She always would be. He turned to Operative 3. Initiate Phase 0. Contain, don't kill. I want her conscious when it ends. 3 hesitated. Sir, with respect, what if she doesn't surrender? Cade's eyes narrowed. Then remind her what happens to those who choose memory over mission. Tessa moved like a ghost across the sand. She entered through an old utility conduit she'd mapped years ago. Knew every curve, every blind spot. It led to the old command. Sector now wired with biometric sensors. She left a decoy heat pouch behind her, classic misdirection. Theta would track it, thinking she was still in the tunnels. She wasn't. She was already inside, through the wall vent. She emerged into the armory. Empty. Silent. But as soon as her boots touched steel, alarms began to pulse. Red lights bathed the room. Steel doors slammed shut. She'd been expected. Hello again, Sergeant. Cade's voice echoed through the chamber. Tessa turned. A speaker on the wall flickered. A camera lens followed her every move. You always did love the back door. I learned from the best, she said flatly. You think you're clever. But this ends the way it always does. You and your cause burning. Tessa smiled grimly. Then let's light it up. She pulled a disc from her jacket and slammed it into the armory terminal. Cade, meet the Echo archive. The real one. The room systems crackled. The disc began transmitting encrypted files, video proof of Echo's war crimes. Unauthorized ops, names, faces, lies. And a final file. Cairo, unedited. Cade's face appeared on screen, barking the order to detonate before the evacuation. Tessa turned to the camera. This goes to every agency, every terminal not scrubbed. Even foreign intel nets. Cade's calm shattered. His fist slammed the console. Cut the feed. Wipe the sector. Kill power now. Too late. Across the world, terminals lit up. Files spilled across secured networks. Private contractors, senators, intelligence partners exposed. His empire had a heartbeat left, and it was bleeding out. As sirens blared. Tessa fought her way through the lower corridor. Theta units swarmed in, weapons raised. But she was faster, smarter, trained in their own tactics. She dropped one with a shoulder feint and suppressed round to the chest. Another fell from a rigged flash grenade, bounced behind a crate. Every corridor she passed, she blocked, rigged with shrapnel charges. She wasn't escaping. She was collapsing the base from the inside. Back in the command center, Cade locked eyes on her position. She's making for the core, his aide shouted. She's gonna blow the fusion node. Cade grabbed his pistol. She won't get the chance. He descended alone, just like Cairo. In the core chamber, glowing blue lights bathed Tessa in an otherworldly hue. The node pulsed raw energy, unshielded. One charge placed here could vaporize the base. She set the charge. Timer, 10 minutes. Behind her, footsteps echoed. She turned. Cade. He looked older. Haunted. She raised her pistol. He raised his. They stared. Across the past. You were like a daughter to me, he said. You used me, she replied. You don't understand what we were protecting. I do. That's why I have to end it. They fired. 2 shots. Hers hit center mass. His missed wide, shaky hands. He collapsed against the wall. Gasping. Tessa walked over, stood above him. Blood leaked from his vest. You think this changes anything? He whispered. It changes everything. She turned and walked out. Behind her, the timer ticked. Tessa emerged from the base entrance into open air. The rain had stopped. A drone buzzed overhead, Nate's voice chirping in. Tell me you're alive, she exhaled. Mostly. Are you out of the blast zone? She looked back once, then ran. Minutes later, Black Echo erupted. A fireball split. The sky. A boom rolled over the mountains like thunder. Then silence. It was over. Echo was dead, and its ghosts finally laid to rest. The Mojave wind whispered through the canyon, carrying ash and the faint hum of helicopters combing through wreckage. What once was Black Echo now lay buried under rubble, flames still licking twisted steel. Tessa sat on a high ridge, blood drying. On her shoulder, gaze locked on the column of smoke rising from the past. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just sat silent and whole for the first time in years. Nate landed the VTOL beside her, cockpit open. He stepped out, cautious, eyes scanning the wreckage behind her before meeting her own. You really did it, he said. No, she said softly. We did. Inside the aircraft, a med drone whirred to life, scanning her injuries. Minor burns, one cracked rib. A bullet grazed across her collarbone. Her body bore the story of survival, but her mind held the weight of everything else. The files had gone global. Every agency that had buried Echo's legacy now scrambled in panic. Military tribunals were being called. Investigative panels demanded transparency. Allies whispered about betrayal. Senators resigned overnight. The cover-up was dying in real -time. And one name kept surfacing in classified chatter. Tessa Morgan. But officially she didn't exist anymore. They flew to a covert extraction point in Nevada. From there, Tessa was offered something unexpected. Full reinstatement, full immunity, and a cleared name. She turned it down. "I wasn't meant to be a soldier forever," she said. "You were never just a soldier," Nate told her. She nodded. That's the problem. Instead, she submitted a single request: witness protection with a new identity. Someplace far from governments, missions, or war. A quiet life one no one would expect her to want. They granted it. Privately and without objection. No ceremony. No flag. Just a sealed file labeled Echo, decommissioned. Months later, in the mountains of Colorado, a woman named Eliza Trenton worked at a local tech repair shop. She lived in a small A-frame cabin surrounded by pine trees and silence. No phones, no social media. Just long hikes, strong coffee, and weekend work repairing radios and busted laptops for cash. The town saw her as quiet, polite, sharp, a little guarded. But kind. They didn't know that her reflexes never dulled. That she checked exits in every room, or that she slept with a custom pistol under her bed and a thumb drive locked in a lead case behind a false wall. They didn't need to, but some ghosts don't fade quietly. One autumn morning, she received a package, no return address. Inside, an old, tarnished titanium dog tag. It read, "Echo Squadron property recovered. Operation Fallen Halo." Tessa stared at it for a long time. Her fingers trembled not from fear, but from memory. She turned it over. Scrawled in etched lines. "You're not forgotten." She swallowed. Rains. He survived. That night, she dug up the false floor in her cabin. Inside was her Echo jacket, folded. Beneath it, a letter she'd written months ago, but never sent. It read, "To whoever finds this, I wasn't a hero. I didn't do it for medals or revenge. I did it because no one else would. They trained me to be invisible. And then they forgot I could see everything. But memory is a weapon. And I remember all of it." She put the letter away, but kept the dog tag in her pocket. Just in case. Far away, in a military courtroom surrounded by high-ranking officers, a projector displayed evidence from the Echo archive. Names were read aloud. Commanders once praised were now facing war crime indictments. In one corner sat a single journalist, invited by special clearance. A young woman. She watched, scribbling notes, recording everything. In her pocket was a photo, a grainy image of a woman with storm gray eyes standing over a ridge in a desert, watching fire rise. The caption read, "Unknown operator, operation. Final pulse." She whispered to herself, "I'll tell your story." Back in Colorado, a storm rolled in. Tessa stepped outside, watching lightning dance in the valley. She didn't flinch at the thunder. She welcomed it. Her life wasn't perfect. Her sleep still came in waves. But she had peace. And purpose. Sometimes the townspeople asked about her past. She'd smile gently and say, "I used to fix things." That was all they needed. One evening, as she walked past the radio shop, she heard a distorted voice crackle from an old CB unit left powered. Ghost 1 to Ghost Net. Storms past. Echo is clear. She paused. No one else seemed to hear it. She walked in, turned off the radio, and locked the door. Then she looked at herself in the mirror. Not tech, not soldier, not ghost, just someone who knew the truth. Made the world remember it. And that's how the quietest voice stopped the loudest machine. They believed she was only the tech, but one shot changed everything. And the Echo still carries